From the glassy waters of Lake Baringo, the Soi Safari Lodge towers above the horizon. For more than a decade, this hotel along Lake Baringo's shoreline has been a home away from home for thousands of local and international tourists, offering the thrill of nature's diversity on one of the Rift Valley's freshwater lakes and the mysteries of life on the 7 islands on Lake Baringo. Early this year, the waters of Lake Baringo that had been steadily rising crept into this establishment, drowning nearly 70% of the infrastructure at this lodge. This was before the coronavirus struck. Peter Chebi, the manager, takes us on a tour of the lost section. This seems like a scene from a horror movie. But it is real.
When we were dealing with the Covid-19, that's now we really saw another problem, another danger of the rising water of Lake Baringo. It was a double tragedy because the water started rising in a very high rate, whereby the board of this lodge tried their best to protect or to prevent the water from coming in. But it was unfortunate because it took over the conference. Also the rooms, we had 66 rooms which are now underwater, the reception area and other facilities which are now affected. On March, we had some booking which are going through the whole month and even exceeding to April. But immediately the president announced the measures, lockdowns and other strict measures. We immediately saw some cancellation by our clients, international clients from as far as Holland and Europe. That's where the problem started. We had 53 staff who are working here, and since the pandemic and the water rises, we reduced our staff, and now we have only 18 staff in operation.
It's been 9 months of cautious optimism for Peter and his team, despite the lake's relentless conquest of the establishment and the sluggish resumption of international travel that is still subject to the country's specific lockdowns and travel bans.
This is now the main bedroom. This is the bed.
Peter shows us what is left of the lodge, from more than 80 rooms to just 30.
Last year, like from June all the way to November, we had good business with a lot of guests from China, England, UK, America, USA. So we had them coming here and spending their day. Some were coming specifically for attractions we are here. Some were coming for conferences. Some who are heading to East Pokot to assist the people there. We make sure that even the rooms are being sprayed, or even one guest uses and check out of that room. We make sure that that room is being sprayed and safe for our next client.
On Kokwa Island, one of the pit stops for tourists, women who ideally lined the shores of the island with their handmade mementos approach us cautiously, their calabashes and beadwork in tow. They tell us things have been bad since March, with hardly any guests coming their way to sample their culture, trinkets and enjoy the geyser, as Henry Olempakanyi says.
Those ones in the islands are affected mostly because there the women are very idle. But now they are very good in beadwork, so they normally do some souvenirs, some decorations, calabashes. So for international tourists, they like it because it's a symbol of Africa.
Less than an hour's drive from Lake Baringo is the Lake Bogoria National Reserve, a prime bird watching location especially for flamingos. Lake Bogoria is famous for hot springs or geysers, but these have been affected by the rising lake.
Tourism is one of the key earners in the country. It cuts across because a tourism industry feeds, according to research, at least 10 people in 100. So the replica effects, because it goes to the suppliers, to the families of the staff, and so many others, has had a bigger impact on us.
And while the pandemic has dealt the hospitality industry a blow to their cash flow stream, some are utilizing this pause in operations to improve and rebrand.
This thing caught so many people off guard. The lessons we are going on is one, diversifications, to make sure that you have a wider portfolio so that you can be able to get as many people in, even when the other one is not working. Two, the act of saving. I think every time you have something extra, you save it for a rainy day.
This has also been a time for stakeholders to review their packaging of travel, from the traditional focus on international tourists to local.
One thing which has really made us so happy is our own local tourists who have come in numbers to support the industry. We've seen repeat clients calling us and saying, we are coming to support you. And this is really very encouraging. So we really want to thank Kenyans for standing with this industry, and we hope that going forward, even the next years, there will be more tourists, local tourists. And us as hoteliers, I think we are coming up also with measures to ensure that we promote more of local tourists, coming up with better ways of managing the industry and ensuring that our costs will be competitive so that everyone else can be taken aboard.
Sami Maina, alias Maridadi, can tell you of all the scenic sites in Kenya, from Lodwar to Loitoktok. For 3 decades plus, he has driven thousands of tourists in his van as a tour guide, offering that local and personal touch to those seeking the adventure of Kenya's wild safari and breathtaking views. Then COVID-19 came and stepped on the brakes.
I was there even during the Gulf War. I was still in this industry, but we were not affected like now. We were there even in 2007. We were not affected like now. But I've never seen something like this in my entire life.
Now he turns to his sheep. He says the blanket 500 million shillings proposed by the Ministry of Tourism for post-recovery is not enough to reverse the COVID-19 damage, especially for people who depended on this key trade.
I tell you personally, one of my cars was repossessed. It was repossessed because the bank was on me. And they were coming every now and then. So we had to give it away. We have got another car. I don't know if at all they can take it tomorrow. Because where we are today, we are minus, zero totally.
For months, this curio shop has opened and closed every day with barely any customers walking in. Foreign tourists were the air that this shop breathed. 19 years of selling African culture through these works of handmade art has been their specialty. Now they gather dust on the display table. Nothing sells Kenya more to the world than these resplendent and beautiful artifacts that have been lying idle here in this curio shop near the Nakuru National Park. This is an entity that directly depends or relies on the traffic of tourists who come into this area, but it has been a tough sell even in this time when it is expected to be peak season.
Hii kazi yetu huwa tunaita kazi ya majira. Kuanzia sasa mwezi wa sita hadi February, hiyo ndio inakuwaga our peak season. That is when we experience a lot of business. Tungekuwa mahali ambapo at least kuna pesa at least ya kiwango ya haja.
Central Rift Valley is one of the vital tourism circuits in the country, receiving a tenth of the international arrivals. It has a variety of world-renowned national parks and game reserves, combined with a collage of wildlife, some endangered yet only resident in Kenya. Revenues here too have been battered.
Initially we lost almost 95% of visitation to the key protected areas, especially at the start of the pandemic. And after the lockdown started, we have now operating maybe at around 15%, a loss of almost 85% of our revenues, which is a big margin. When you look at the general visitation to like Nakuru, Hellsgate and Longonot, that's an visitors of almost an excess of 250,000 visitors per year. But now we are operating maybe at less than that number, almost less than 50,000 visitors. So that one is a very, very low performance. And looking at that scenario, when you combine maybe with Mara, it's an excess of almost 300,000 visitors that visit now the Central Rift Conservation Area in totality.
This has been compounded by the rising lake phenomenon. The Lake Nakuru National Park is the third most visited park in the country. With parts of the park now underwater, a lot of adjustments had to be made, including rerouting visitors and introducing boat riding.
Like Nakuru National Park, which was highly affected in terms of the water level rise, we lost almost 24 kilometers of road, and we've increased now the road network to facilitate visitors game viewing and ensure that at least visitors enjoy the parks the way it used to be before the issue of the water level rise.
By this December, the Ministry of Tourism said the country had recorded a 70% decline in international arrivals compared to the same period in 2019, and that by June, more than 2 million people had lost their jobs. But it is not all doom. News of the Covid-19 vaccine rollout has been received with much optimism in these quarters, and plans are underway to prepare for the next year under the new health protocols in a post-Covid-19 world.
And as much as COVID has created a challenge, it's an opportunity for us to think better, to also adjust. The domestic market is very important. So value the domestic market, both in pricing, in service, in experience, in product.
We are hopeful with the discovery and approval of the vaccine that next year, by mid-2021, things will shape up. However, our industry has learned to be resilient, and most of the hotels, as you can see, are operating, although below par, but for sure we are going to make it to the next season.
We are also particularly happy. The national government came up with a program of about 3 billion facility to help tourism. So I think there's also need for good and prudent management. And we will also be embarking on serious marketing, not just locally, but also outside, because destinations across the world that have suffered will also be going out there to compete. So where will we be as Kenya in trying to attract visitors here?
To say the tourism industry has just been affected would be a grave understatement. Nakuru County was seeking to rake in from the 100 billion shillings estimated to come from meetings, incentives, conferences and events. The government has injected 500 million shillings to the industry in terms of helping it recover. But according to stakeholders, as much as that help is welcome, they will still need much more to recover from 2020. 2021 is teeming with hope, and the resilience of stakeholders is promising better tidings ahead. Bridget Ngana, NTV, Nakuru County.